Here we go. Okay, so as we go through this, hey, we're going. You have specific items that there'll be terms that are just kind of talked about, and you got to make sure that you're able to make the connections and distinctions between them. So first, Congress. Now, let's focus first on Congress. This is a weird label because almost always, and I'm usually pretty interchangeable, but almost always when people are talking about Congress, they are not talking about the legislative body. They're talking about the House. It's a weird label to just call it Congress, and then some people put it just as the House. If you're a congressman or congresswoman, that means you're a representative. You're not a senator. If you're a senator, you're a senator. So it's sometimes a little confusing. Congress meaning both houses or just the House. It's never the Senate. If you can't just say like Congress has the power to approve treaties. That's the Senate. So just think about that distinction. It's not really going to catch you or screw you up too much. Just know that it happens. But the Senate is the upper house. Because what? Why are they the upper house? What do they have more of? They have more power. They have more power, more responsibilities because they are not picked by the people. That's where that starts. They're not picked by the people. They have longer terms. There's equality across the states. So California can't approve a treaty while Wyoming and Montana hate it. It's equal, 2 per state. The House, population, 2-year terms, elected by the people. So those are the initial breakdowns of why they're different, but it just continues from there. How many of you have been to the Capitol? What is the purpose of the legislative body? Make the laws. They make the laws. The laws that get passed in our country start in the Capitol. And there's only one minor rule that impacts what bill can start where. Otherwise, it can start anywhere, House or Senate. Now, going back to the beginning, what article describes the legislative branch? Take a guess. In the Constitution, what article? Not 2. 1. Why? Because it's important. This is the strongest branch of government. So we put so much emphasis on those presidential elections. We always have. We put so much emphasis on the president being the leader of the free world. We always have. This is where the real power is. There's only one president, so it makes sense. There are 535 members of the Capitol, but they are the ones who have the power. They make the laws, and even if the president doesn't like what they're doing, they have many, many, many ways to go over that, circumvent it, and still get what they want done. So as we look at the differences between the terms, think about how that impacts what they'll do. So the 2-year term, the representatives, they're more connected to the people. So what did I tell you about representative decisions compared to senator decisions? What do representatives almost always have to think about? Re-elections. Every 2 years, they have to get their job back. They have to reapply, basically. Senators only have to reapply every 6 years. So they are allowed to make decisions where they don't really have to worry about what their constituents want. They have to think of it. But what I'm saying is sometimes they can make a decision that maybe they believe is right, or maybe they go with other senators and avoid what their constituents want. So they have the ability to break away from that. Now, this is just a quick history with it. Thinking about Parliament. The parliamentarians, the House of Commons, House of Lords. Over in Britain, that was our example. And we didn't really want anything like that because what is the House of Lords made up of? Lords, which means what? What is a lord? What? You are a member of the royal family. In Britain, I don't know how much you guys talk about this in world history. If you live in Britain as a member of the royal family, You get paid to be a member of the royal family. How do you belong to the royal family? You're born into it. They still have those. It's not quite the monarchy that it once was, but it still exists. To belong to this, you have to be a member of the House of Lords. And it is bicameral. The House of Commons, if you're a commoner, you're not a lord. We wanted that, the bicameralism, but we really did not like this, the breakdown of that. So we have no nobility, but we do have the bicameralism, because what happens with a bicameral legislature? What does a bicameral legislature do? So what does it do to a faction? Keeps it in check. It's not just one. It has to pass two bodies representing different groups. Even though you have a representative from Michigan, we have 14, 2 senators, they do not represent the same people. They don't. All 14 of them represent only their district. Senators represent their entire state. So while we're all from Michigan, your senator is going to listen to you much differently than your representative. All right, now the big differences here are just labels, and you need to make sure you have them from a view that one is more respected, one is not. We know that the Senate is more respected. 6-year term. The House, 2-year term. But there are some other slight differences. Some of you, let's think about age. How old do you have to be a representative? 25. What about a senator? 30. It's okay, we're bumping up, right? It's a little bit more respected. How about president? 35. So that does show you what they want in terms of the actual person involved. Now, the citizenship is similar as well. 7 years. You have to be a citizen for 7 years to be a member of the House. You can't just move here, naturalize, and then you can be a rep. You've got to be a citizen for 7 years. The Senate, 9. So it's just another bump up. So they have those different requirements just in terms of a respect, education, maybe commitment to the country, whatever. Then the powers. And make sure you keep these separate. So we did this yesterday on Kahoot. Who starts the impeachment process? Why does the House have the ability to start the impeachment process? They're connected to the people. So if they don't like what the president is doing or a judge, they have the ability to impeach them, which is just that 50% vote. And then what happens? It goes to the Senate for, what does the Senate decide? If they get the boot. The Senate decides if they actually lose their job. The House just decides, yeah, there's enough here to try them to see if they should lose their job. Now, this is the one that I said was the only rule for where a bill has to start. If they wanted to pass a bill about education, a representative could introduce the bill just as equally as a senator. If they wanted to pass a bill about revenue, it has to start in the House. What is revenue? That's a fancy word for money, sort of. So how does the government make profit? Taxes. If they want to pass a bill about taxes, it has to be introduced in the House. Why does it have to be introduced in the House? Why did the Constitution give them that power? Closest tie to the people. So that is a tax. Taxes go throughout history. So the connection of the people, though, limits the ability for government to just do what they want. This is connected to the people. And the debate rules, which we'll focus on quite a bit. There are 435 members of the House. Politicians, what do they all like to do? Argue and talk. If you let 435 people debate every single bill as much as they want, what would you accomplish? Nothing. So they have limits on how long they can talk. They have limits on what they can talk about. And guess who decides who gets to talk? Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House. And we'll talk about leadership later. Paul Ryan is the most powerful person in, if you could argue, in the country. But that's probably a little bit of a stretch with how big the presidency has become over the last 30, 40 years. But for sure in Congress. He is more powerful than any senator because of what he is able to do in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, all right, they try the impeachment, for removal. They approve the appointments. These are the ones that are happening right now. The confirmation hearings, the cabinet heads, the FBI head, the EPA, the FAA, whatever. They approve the appointments, the advise and consent. They have to approve appointments as ambassadors. President Trump is going through all these new ambassadors, every different country around the world where we have an embassy. They have to approve them. Most of the time, though, think about how many jobs that is. They're just going to go quick. They just approve pretty much whatever they want. The president. And then unless there's some huge challenge from the states or the people, whatever, it'll go through. Treaties is a little bit harder, 2/3, but it's still up to the Senate. And then lastly, loose debate rules. Loose debate rules, there are 100 people, so guess what they get to do? They get to talk as much as they want. What is that called when they talk as much as they want? Filibuster. They can filibuster. So quite literally, there are no time limits. They could take a book, say they want the floor, they have to be granted the floor, and they could read the book page to page entirely and start over 15 times. There are no rules that prevent them from talking unless the Senate votes that they can't talk anymore. So, but it's 60%. 60% of the senators have to agree that you need to shut up. Which means if you want filibusters to be ineffective, how many members of your party do you need to be in the Senate? 60. Do the Republicans have 60 senators right now? No. So the Democrats have the ability to filibuster, and because Republicans don't have 60 members in the Senate, the Democrats have a little bit of leverage to make sure that they get a little bit of compromise with what they want. Yes?
What's the longest filibuster that's happened?
What?
What's the longest?
Somebody, I don't know exactly length, but how it works now is they don't actually even filibuster. Let's say you're a Democrat, okay? You would say, hey, guys, I'm going to filibuster. Then the Republicans would do a count, try to see how many Democrats they could get on your side. And if they got to 60 that were going to stop you, they would tell you, look, Bosigal, you're going to be shut down. We're going to vote for cloture, which means you're closed. You're done. That's what cloture is. And you just never would do it because you know that it would be shut down. If they don't get to 60 and you say you're going to filibuster, you would drop the bill and just keep going on to something else. So it's the threat of a filibuster now. But a long time ago, somebody read a phone book.
No.
So, those are things that happen. All right, but back to this. Back to Britain, to Congress, Parliament. Look, hey, the Prime Minister, the head of Parliament is the Prime Minister. Similar to our Majority Leader, Speaker of the House, really, because they're picked from the House of Commons that has the most representatives. But they don't really do as much. Our candidates are not candidates. Our members of both the House and the Senate are pretty respected individuals, and they don't get paid a ton. They get paid well, very well. But they aren't millionaires or on their own because of government pay wealthy. Most of them are wealthy because of other endeavors, speeches, appearances, books, whatever. So they have a lot at their disposal, and those benefits are what make them powerful. And there's some other benefits that you wouldn't necessarily think of. Yeah. And? And what did they talk about or read or do?
It doesn't say. They just didn't stop talking.
Okay. All right. So just very quickly here. One of the big things that we're talking about from the House to the Senate in the next couple slides is the trends that have occurred and where power resides. For a long time, we had some quick, strong individuals in both the Senate and the House, where it was just understood that you're going to act together, get things done, whether you disagreed or not. Where now the committees have taken over, which means the floor activity is kind of unnecessary. The real bulk work of the House and the Senate happens in the committees. That means the committee leaders are extremely powerful. That means that if you want a bill to pass, you need to talk to the members of that committee where it's going to be talked about. Because if they report out that it is a good bill, there's a very good chance that it's going to pass. So you start there and then work your way up. It's not really on the floor anymore where you have kind of listening to the people who are in power, the leaders, the majority leaders, minority leaders, whatever, with the committees not really doing anything. Now, almost everything happens in the committee. You still debate it on the floor, but most of it happens in the committee. Is anybody not really sure what I'm saying when I say floor? So that's what, like, if you see the Capitol, where they sit, that's the floor. Most of the time, and I'll show you a calendar in just a second, they're not in the floor. They're usually in committees, in hearings, whatever. Very seldom are they actually on the floor debating bills, and I'll show you kind of what that is. All right, so just very quickly, this is one of your questions. You don't have to be historically accurate with everything that's happened, but some big changes. I told you, who is the most powerful person in Congress right now? Paul Ryan, the current Speaker of the House. Why is he the Speaker of the House? Because he is the head of the Republican representatives. They vote him in.
Doesn't he allocate time to the representatives?
Yeah, he gets to decide all that. And he has a lot of other power too. But he's in charge of the Rules Committee, which we'll get to. But that starts here. They were upset with how much power the Speaker had. Okay, now these are historical trends, and it's all relative to the resolutions that they pass. Because the House kind of gets to decide what rules they have, just like the Senate. If the Senate wanted to get rid of filibusters in a different way than just cloture, they could if they pass some resolutions, but they just don't. They just keep it as is. Same thing with the House. Now, though, in the Newt Gingrich, he took over the Speaker of the House now since the 90s. You can go back to John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi. They are the most powerful people in Congress. They get to do quite a lot, and there's no real way to stop them. So the Senate, again, smaller, more respected, but this is the big change that we need to pay attention to right here. The state legislatures picked the state senators. So if you wanted to be a senator, what do you think you had to do? Already be some sort of power. Already be connected. Already be well known. Probably pretty wealthy. Probably pretty connected. Maybe a heavy donor. So it was basically like you were a connected individual, which gives what to the Senate? What does the Senate become then? Who is in the Senate? Let's say we had 100 members. They're the elites. That is not a representative democracy. So as times changed, we were able to recognize that 17th Amendment. Now we vote for both the members of the House and the Senate, where they have to respond to everybody. And with the Senate, who did we vote for senator this year in Michigan? Who did we vote for? Who can tell me? Does anybody know who we voted for in Michigan? Nobody? You should know this. Not Paul Ryan. Does anybody have a guess? It's a trick question. We didn't. We didn't vote for anybody. Because we were in the 2-2 blank. We didn't vote for anybody this year. In 2 years we will. Debbie Stabenow will be up. Then in 2 more years, Gary Peters will be up again. Then in 2 more years, so 6 from now, we won't vote for anybody. We rotate around the country. So it's a continuous body. The House, all 435 need to go up for re-election. In the Senate, only 33, or 34 are up at a time. So it's more consistency. You don't have to train the newbies, and you get more done. Chase, do you have something?
So were you saying that we're gonna have an election commission this year?
No.
We're gonna have an election year?
In 2018, we'll vote for a senator. We'll vote for our rep, but we'll also vote for our senator. So some more about Congress. We know we have 2-year terms, the Senate 6, okay? But the transition of how the legislative body operates is really different than what it used to be. So number one, think about where representatives live. Where do representatives live? They have to, really 2 places. They have to live in their district, and then most of them also live in DC. Most of them have 2 places. So in doing so, they're able to travel a little bit. Think back 200 years ago. Was that really an option? No, it was much more difficult to do so. They would meet in January 3rd, get their business done, and then take off for the year. Now it's a year-long job. To an extent, because I'll show you this calendar, and this is just a calendar from last year. This year they haven't shown. This is a yearly calendar. So what are the blue dates? When they actually meet. These are the people that run your country. Look at that. This is when they're actually on the floor. Now, I did tell you a lot of the time they're in committees. This isn't like they're just days off. A lot of times they're back home doing meetings, fundraisers, town halls, whatever. But if you take a look, I mean, this is quite a vacation. What about October? Why is October blank? Halloween? They have to do their costumes? Elections. They take off the month of October to go back home and campaign. So they really do have kind of a lot of, let's just say they have a lot of flexibility. How about we say that? So they're able to kind of do that. Now, I told you they're really given a lot of power, respect, whatever. So most people in Congress, the House and the Senate, are what? Most of them are what? How would you describe them? White male. White male. Now they are becoming more diverse, but the House is becoming more diverse quicker. And there are a couple of reasons. Why? Why is the House becoming more diverse? What?
The times are changing so much, and the people are changing as well.
I thought you were saying something else with time. Do you know what I'm trying to get at with time?
Oh wait,
It's faster turnover. Every 2 years you vote. That's one reason. What's another reason why the House is becoming less white, less male? Who do they represent? Smaller area. So think about that. We have probably between Flint and Detroit, probably 5 to 6 reps. I don't have it in my head right now. As opposed to an entire state. Don't you think it's a little bit easier to convince the people of Flint and Detroit to vote for a minority than it would be for the entire state to vote for a minority? So thinking about those differences help you understand why there are those distinctions. Okay, we're getting right at the end here. Just kind of looking at some issues here. The percentages, this is the current makeup. We're in the 115th Congress. 81% male. 10% African Americans. Now, an interesting one. I kind of talk about members of Congress. Has anyone watched House of Cards? You watched some of it? Okay, so they do a lot of things that are illegal. and they don't really get punished for it. Drunk driving is one of the biggest. You can see this year, 1994 or 98, 94 were arrested. There's an interesting clause in the who's got their you? Let's do you. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. Okay, you. Yes, Chase, you with a computer. So there's a really interesting part of the Constitution for protection of members of the Senate and the House that, in a way, is not giving them power or an excuse because there's a specific time for it, but it shows you what they are capable of doing. So, incumbency advantage, last few here, marginal to safe districts. This is specific really to the House. So if you are an incumbent, do you have an advantage? Yes, why? Because of these things right there. Redistricting, what do you get to do with your district lines? Change them to get an advantage. So think about North Carolina. There's a reason why North Carolina has a majority of Republicans representing the state in D.C. And it's not because there are that many Republican voters in North Carolina. It is because of the district lines and the way that they were drawn. So gerrymandering is a way that has limited the diversity of the House as well. Even though it's been quicker than the Senate, there are still limits there for controlling the population. Franking privilege, what is that? You get to frank for free. If you are a senator or a representative, you get to send mail, U.S. mail, with your name stamped on it as a stamp, and you don't have to pay for it. So they get free advertisement, basically, because they can send out as many leaflets as they want for free. So today with email, Twitter, whatever, it's not as big of an impact, but it is still used. I got a lot. Boom, Gary Molinar. So you still get them. It's just not as big of an impact as it once was. Media exposure, fundraising, casework, constituency service. They get to take care of you. If you want a new building, Pork Barrel, they will do it, which means there's a good chance they'll be reelected. Aaliyah? Percentages? So back up to those. With the incumbents, when you're running for reelection, safe districts, marginal. If you are in a marginal district, that means the last time you won with less than 55% of the vote. In a safe district, you win with more than 55. Now, the parties, Democrats and Republicans, both have funds set aside to help you. Where are they going to spend money to help you get reelected? Marginal. They're not going to spend it in the safe districts because they know you're going to win easy. So they do categorize these. And they focus on these districts to try to get the most funds to those candidates running for reelection so they can still win. It might be close. It's a marginal victory, but they still want to see that victory, so that's where they spend their funds. All right, Chase, what do you got for me?